real estate or financial decisions. Please remember, when following advice, your results may vary.
Welcome,
And all
Meerkat.
information covered here
Welcome.
is not intended to cover all aspects of the subject material, but rather a sample of issues the hosts and guests consider important.
Any way you choose.
And now it's time for a power hour from America's trusted resource for everything real estate. Everything in the real estate industry is in a constant movement of change. It's a real estate revolution with your host, Victoria Riva Dinera, and her co-host, Scott Forcino. Welcome to the Real Estate
Tell me what, right now?
Revolution.
10 seconds.
Right now?
Revolution.
10 seconds.
Hi, welcome to the Revolution. I am Scott Forcino, and Victoria Riva Dinera, our host, is at another important real estate conference, sharing and learning from the best in the industry to bring back to her company and to this radio show. I am here tonight to talk to you about some really important matters regarding the real estate industry. Usually we have a situation where we're talking about looking for homes or qualifying for a loan, and that's the initial aspect here. Those are things that you might do months and months in advance. Let me compare and contrast these two important factors that we have tonight. We have home inspections and we have home insurance. And these are really, really tough subjects that customers are not looking at until they found the house they like, they maybe have qualified for a loan. These are what I would consider to be, in the real estate world, the last minute stuff. People, when they, in this area of New York, and I'm sure in other areas as well, contracts are either conditioned upon getting a satisfactory home inspection, or they just go with the contract and see if the buyer wants to proceed. I always say that I'm going to ask our home inspector calling in tonight, Steve Silva, whether the home inspection is a punch list or a renegotiation tool. And I say, of course, it's not. However, it is used sometimes for those two purposes itself. We have a insurance professional, Robert Springer, calling in a few moments. And there are a lot of issues regarding insurance that people do not know about. A lot of false beliefs, a lot of coverages that people imagine, a lot of fundamentals that people do not really have securely in their understanding regarding coverage, regarding what is excluded, regarding even what is necessary in the event of a disaster. So we have a bunch of questions for him. We welcome your callers at 914-693-5700. That's 914-693-500. Any questions regarding insurance or home inspections, we welcome to find out. Now, I personally had, on behalf of clients and my own situation, some water main breaks, some flooding. I think a lot of us had hurricane damage from Hurricane Sandy. Dealing with the insurance company, what will they cover, whether it's a broken fence, a pipe that burst and flooded a basement. In addition to that, I guess, let me think what else. Fighting with insurance broker because the insurance carrier themselves gave them a little bit less coverage. And we also had a situation on behalf of a client where a tree fell, broke part of a fence post, and the tree fell into the pool, and they covered, I guess, the fence post, but they wouldn't cover the damage to the pool. So we're going to get to the bottom of what home buyers think is the appropriate approach with regard to finding out whether their home passes muster, and with regards to home inspection, and what they should expect regarding bank costs concerning insurance, and what is reasonable for them to expect. There are issues that are involving fire and wind and tornado and hail and theft that we want to touch on and see what the home buyer should expect and what the bank requires. So am I hearing? Am I lucky enough to hear Robert Springer?
Yep.
Hello, is that Robert?
That's me.
That is Robert. Hi, welcome to the Real Estate Revolution.
Thank you for having me.
Victoria Riva is not here tonight. We want to give a shout out to her. We are filling in, you and I and another gentleman, Steve, are filling in for the three of us. And let me know a little bit about yourself, Robert. You're an insurance professional with what company?
With Liberty Mutual, started my career with them about 18 years ago, and I'm one of the top percentile of their agents at the Liberty throughout the country.
Interesting. And is this RIVA or is this Viva or is this okay? I'm hearing some feedback. Is it okay? Okay. So a big important thing, Robert, is I think the way the public views insurance. I was saying as a lead-in, people look for homes, people even qualify for mortgages. But tell me, has it been your experience that people are days from a close and they call you for an insurance policy?
Yeah, that's when I was listening to your intro. That's a very key point. It is a last-minute thing, and just when you're buying a car and you're looking at what you're paying on your lease or finance, people wait for the last minute on that, and they find out sometimes the insurance costs as much as the car. There are situations where we come into all the time with home insurance where clients come in at the last minute and they're expecting a very low number, but maybe because of due to the age of the house or the proximity to the coastline or other factors, that it might be actually a difficult property to insure, and it might have been something that they should have started earlier to look at.
Okay, now listen, I got a bunch of questions. This is you and I conversational for the next, I guess, 20 or so minutes. I'm looking at 6:11. We got plenty of time. So I'm going to just throw out things and see what you think. So quickly, Robert, what should buyers do? I mean, when they're looking at a house online, what would you suggest they do?
They want to keep in touch with their insurance agent if they have one. As an insurance agent, I'm always glad to look at my customers to see what they're looking at and give numbers on different houses. If they have an idea, they want to make an offer on a house, they can always call me. Realtors usually do as well to make sure that the house is insurable and that there's no pitfalls to, jump on ahead of time to make sure that everything runs smoothly. So,
well, is there like there's an appraisal with a mortgage? Is there any kind of physical assessment or even a review of the physical premises before a policy is issued?
Yeah, insurance agents can look up a lot of details online through different websites and then also databases that we have. But an appraisal is really going to be, that appraiser went to that home and got all the details of the property. When we insure a property, we're not looking at the market value. We're looking at what it would cost to rebuild that house in case the customer had a fire or any other kind of covered loss.
And what's that called? Replacement value?
That's called replacement value, what the actual house is going to cost to replace.
Okay. What's the other, I guess, metric? The other metric is the actual cash value?
Actual cash value would mostly apply to personal property. Actual cash value is based on the depreciated value of property, real property, the actual building, or their personal property. A lot of times I see customers have policies that they got just to close on the property, and they're not the best coverage. They're actual cash value policies, but people want to have a replacement cost policy. What that does is if you have a loss, and let's say there was a major natural disaster, material went up because it's not as readily accessible. Labor went up because all the contractors are busy doing work, replacing stuff after a storm. Replacement cost gives an additional percentage, depending on what company you have, above what they're actually paying for to rebuild. So it's an extra buffer for that customer to make sure that they have additional coverage.
Okay, I'm going to give you, just anecdotes. And I had a pipe burst in a home of mine, and I guess PVC piping, and it ruined the basement, and nobody covered it. And what was wrong there?
Well, it depends on different companies. A lot of times, long-term seepage might not be covered, so it's important when you do see some kind of, watermark or whatever else, you want to call your insurance company or actually act upon it either way through either calling a plumber or some kind of service in the house to actually take care of the claim and to mitigate the loss. Long-term seepage, the companies will come in there with humidity detectors and see how long it's actually been going on.
Okay.
So that happens a lot in older homes where you have older pipes, but you want to always make sure that you're on top of things.
Okay, let me ask you a few questions. Now, I was reading that many homeowners have what we call misguided views. One says that 1/3 of homeowners believe that flood damage will be covered in the standard policy. True?
I can definitely believe that. Customers don't realize there's two misconceptions with floods. When insurance companies are looking at distance to the water, they're not worried about the flood from the river coming up to you and flooding your house. That's going to be covered under a FEMA flood insurance policy. Most insurance carriers will write you a policy through FEMA, but at the end of the day, the company that's going to cut the check to you is the Federal Emergency Management, the agency there. That's flood from a natural disaster. A pipe breaking, your boiler bursting, those are typical things that are covered, or your roof leaking. Those are going to be covered under your home insurance policy.
So we had a flood too. I guess on the House of Floods, from the hot water heater with the tankless system due to that polar vortex, broke, freezing cold water. What happens there?
That you want to call your insurance company. I can't speak to individual situations, but that's typically something that would be covered under a home insurance.
And that's what else is covered? The cleanup and the remediation as well?
Yep, exactly. Typically, the main thing that your insurance company is worried about is mold damage, especially if there's young people or older people in the house. And they'll usually send in an actual company in there to really they want to stop the losses for as quickly as possible, shut the water off, make sure the leak is contained. And then the second thing is to make sure that mold is not going to be an issue.
Okay, what is the clue report? Is that, I've been told that's kind of the Carfax of houses?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when you're actually purchasing a home, and it depends on the company, which company you're with, they'll look at either your history with multiple homes that you might own, or they might actually look at that actual home and see if that's had losses on it. And losses do come into play, depending again on companies, on the actual price of the insurance.
I've been also told that insurance policies are now credit driven. What do you say to that?
That's definitely been an industry thing for the past few years, both on auto and home insurance. That's a major indicator. I'm just a sales guy, but the numbers, the people that crunch the numbers, definitely see that that's an indicator of future losses.
I mean, you think that's fair? What if you just have a weak roof or a windy area, or you could still pay your bills on time and they have a leaky roof?
I can't say if it's fair. The numbers speak for themselves. When you look at that, when you look at the data, it's obviously something that the industry has gone towards. So the data does prove that that is the case. But there's a lot of different indicators. There's a lot of different factors that an insurance company takes into place when they're coming up with a price.
Does CLUE stand for anything? CLUE?
Comprehensive loss underwriting something.
With an E, right? I don't know. I don't know. That is interesting.
I knew that when I took my licensing back a long time ago. But
I knew that from clients crying. But let me ask you, what's even the theory of a deductible? It always bugs me. I've had these policies where I'm paying for it and they said the first whatever, 500 or 5,000 is up to me. Isn't that kind of annoying? Why?
They don't want what's called, and this is an industry term, nuisance claims. The smaller claims, like somebody loses, has a scratch on their dining room table from something or whatever else, just, off the top of my head. You really want to use home insurance for the larger losses. So when you have a deductible, when you have skin in the game, you want to make sure that you're putting in the loss, claims in for the larger claims. And depending, again, on company, it could affect your price going forward. Some companies do, some companies don't surcharge for claims going forward.
So what would you advise buyers? Let's say they've first-time buyers and, they don't know much. Maybe they had a car, obviously, but they don't know what it means to, I know you can't quote prices or because you have no idea about these fictional people, but what would you say to these people? What should they look for?
It's important to actually have an agent and speak to that agent and call them up. You have a loss, you have something that happens in the home. Call your agent, get their opinion on what they should do, get their opinion on if they should or should not put a claim in for that.
Okay, well, I'm talking about starting. Let's say you're a millennial and you do everything with your fingers on a phone or an iPad, and you want to go to e-insurance or something. I guess what I'm asking is, what's the importance of relationship going forward? You can own this home or rest of your life or other homes. What would you tell young people or even just people for the first time buying?
I would say just the same thing on a car insurance claim. Factor in if you can sustain a loss and do something out of pocket. I had a client call in today just about a pipe breaking and going to be a couple $1,000. It's really up to them. I would give them my personal opinion, but I would tell people that are looking at buying a home and getting in there that you want to use the insurance for the larger claims, because if a customer puts in too many claims, it could be, and they get dropped from XYZ company, it could be very difficult or almost unaffordable to get insurance. through another carrier if they have a lot on that clue report, if
Okay.
they have a lot on that loss history report.
Okay, Robert, give us a few moments. We have to go to a quick break
Sure.
to hear from our really, really friendly, supportive sponsors, and we'll get right back. So stay where you are. Thanks.
Have you ever been disappointed because something important you
Can you get my question?
wrong at the last
You want to get
moment?
insurance? What do you want to hear? I
Doesn't
got
that
it.
make you really
So,
frustrated?
folks,
That won't happen at
call in
home
with any
mortgage,
questions
where you're in
you might
the
have,
loan process,
or
which
experiences
is
you've
the
had.
Text them in.
hassle from
Text
getting
them in.
your loan approved quickly. Mortgage is
We
an
had somebody from
important
Moscow,
factor
somebody
for
from
Moscow.
Ireland,
states, including
Moscow Mule.
and
for you. How? At Movement Mortgage, your loan is processed in 7
17
days,
people on
and we
Meerkat,
underwrite
most of those
in the
people on
first 48
Periscope.
hours. We expedite your loan and update you continually. When buying your first home, upgrade
I want him to tell us what you would,
financing. Call your Movement Mortgage team today. The movement
guide.
of change is here for you with Movement Mortgage. Call Movement Mortgage at 1-800-516-2119. That's 1-800-516-2119. Movement Mortgage is an equal housing lender. NMLS ID 39179. The movement of change is here. Movement
2 minutes.
okay?
This is Paul Oscar, the nation's credit repairman, and I want to help you improve your credit. As the CEO of Better Qualified, I've helped thousands of people over the past 10 years. I'm the credit expert for Fox Business News and all the major networks. I'm a certified FICO Pro that uses the consumer laws to help delete negative information off of credit reports. We have a debt elimination program that focuses on the laws surrounding collections, judgments, and charge-offs. You could be entitled to up to $1,000 per violation. Call now for your free credit consultation. 888-533-8138. That number again, 888-533-8138. Or visit us on the web
So it's
at
the 20, it's
betterqualified.com.
Whether you're looking
6:22, so we got
Somebody
a
said
70.
nice haircut for you.
It's a few weeks old, thank you, though.
A wide array of products and best customer service available in the lending industry. They have renovations.
Yeah, they like
I'm off the market. You could let if she's female, let her know I'm
If
off
you
the
want to
market.
get a new home built, they have construction to permanent
Yeah.
loans with competitive rates and quick
Bob and
closing.
Scott,
Any
three.
home mortgage has federally insured FHA.
What's that kind of
Scott.
Chuck met Larry with someone with Sandler and King of Queens?
Kevin James.
Chuck let Mary Larry.
When Larry met Chuck, I think, or when Chuck met Larry, one of them. That's a funny one.
That was for insurance, I think, right? He lost from the fire
They will
department.
get you the right mortgage for you. Call Mac Home Mortgage at 188
15 seconds.
1313.
Take a better picture and see some other pictures.
1313. Mac Home Mortgage is an equal
I was exactly where you told me to be.
No, it's perfect, but I was at a dumb smile.
Oh, you're talking about yourself.
Yeah.
5 seconds.
No, we're not watching the news. That's just on in the back.
Okay, hey Robert, we're back. I wanted to ask you from some of my own personal experience as well. What about different kind of investors, or if a house is real estate owned by a bank, or it's a fixer-upper? What do you do at that point for people who want something that clearly needs work?
You definitely want to communicate that to your agent and the company, because a lot of companies will do spot checks, or even some companies do on every home. They'll do an inspection either a few weeks or a few months after the purchase. If there's any form of, notification in the policy that the house is going to be renovated or worked on, when we see a bunch of trucks and a 30-yard dumpster out front, we'll understand what's going on. If we don't know that up front and we see work going on, there's obviously a lot more liability for workers being on the premises and on a home that's not occupied. So we get a little nervous, and there are some insurance companies that will cancel because of that. But if we know that, we give you a certain amount of time to finish the work, as long as it's professional, licensed contractors. And as long as you're communicating with your agent and the company, and we'll work with you.
Along the lines of people going last minute, I think people don't realize that it's also the bank that's the additional insured, right? I mean, what is that called?
There could be the loss payee on the
Okay.
or the additional insurance, exactly.
And how does that work in the event of a fire or flood?
So depending on the amount of the claim, they will usually cut a check out and they will list the bank. The bank's got to sign off on depending on what size. The bank owns your home until you pay the mortgage off. So really everything's got to go through them. They don't want you walking away from the house and taking the check and just saying, forget the mortgage, I'm going to just take this $250,000 check and walk away. So you usually have to have a sign off, but that's really an easy thing to get taken care of when you have a claim.
I see. Okay, makes perfect sense.
And one point in that process that a lot of customers are not aware of when they buy a home, your home insurance typically will cover you for 12 months, or different companies have no limit, to move you somewhere else, to relocate you if you have a fire. You got to still pay your mortgage, and here you are having to relocate your family of 5 to another 3-bedroom house, and now having to pay rent somewhere else. Many customers are not aware that that will be paid for a certain amount of time, depending on the carrier you have, to actually take care of that. And they'll even relocate your family, too.
I've heard of that. Now, what happened, thankfully, we haven't had any storms, like Superstorm Sandy, but what happened in that case? I mean, what were you faced with? Claims and...
I became less of a salesperson and more of a, first point of contact for my customers. Back at that time, I worked in the Staten Island office, and it's an island. We did have a lot of losses, a lot of customers that were displaced, even loss of life down there. So that was more of a time that I had to be more reactive to customers, making sure that they got in touch with the right people, and that checks were being cut. So a lot of companies will come out there and literally write a check so that family can go to Target and get clothes off the rack to wear. They're in that kind of situation.
So were you dealing with, I guess, the government agencies such as FEMA, right, as well?
Yep. Liberty had set actually a truck up, and actually a few claims trucks in really the worst areas. So people can actually not just be on the phone, but they actually had a point of, an actual claims office, a mobile one, but a claims office on the island that they could actually go through.
So how does something like that, if at all, change, I guess, underwriting standards? Do they change the way they do business at that point?
Yeah, definitely. The insurance company in the Northeast, their rates have pretty much, I'd say, doubled from what I've seen from other carriers and everything else, probably in the past 10 years. It all started back with Katrina, and even before that. And they looked at their business, the insurance companies in the Northeast, and said if something like that happens up here, they're in a lot of trouble. So a lot of companies scaled back, and they looked at underwriting a lot differently, definitely.
So who insures oceanfront property, or even, maybe not oceanfront, but bayfront, or anywhere on Staten Island, or islands in the Gulf of Mexico, or any waterfront areas in the country?
There are companies that do that. Sometimes the state, as in Florida was, is still very difficult to get insurance in the coastal areas. Miami is one of the markets that's difficult. Sometimes the state actually has like a assigned risk for property, basically. New York has it as well. But there are other companies that are A-rated companies that you might not have ever heard before, but they will write locally, and they're rated by New York. New York insurance is very difficult. The insurance department, they're very stringent. We set the standard for the rest of the nation. Insurance is basically done on a state level. So if you pass the muster to actually get a license to sell insurance and to operate in New York, you're relatively a good company. There are some companies that are, not the best out there, but, for the most part, New York State keeps all of us in check pretty well.
And that's who you answer? Is that the Division of Licensing Services?
No, it's the New York State Department of Insurance.
I see. Okay, and those are, I guess, rates. People complain about rates. I know you can't be specific, but I guess those are generated pursuant to what, risk and value?
Yeah, and to make sure that, the company is financially stable enough to pay out the claims.
Were companies wiped out, so to speak, after Sandy?
I can't speak of that, but I know that there have been companies that have lost their right to sell insurance in New York because their financials don't add up. They can only raise rates so much, and if New York State doesn't want to let them raise rates 20%, and that's what they need to do, and they're rated at a lower level, and they will not be able to sell insurance.
That's what's troubling in my view is, this is for real estate consumers, this show, but we are part of a greater real estate practitioner community across the country where everyone's doing their job, first base, second base, shortstop, third base, but when the client may have the beautiful loan and the beautiful income and they pick the house of their dreams, that house or they may be the problem. And it seems to me the lender, in this area, the lawyer, the realtor, don't have a clue. So this person's kind of like, the whole transaction is dependent on them doing their homework and if they go to, Schlocko Company, then it messes up the whole Apple Card.
And they need to work well with the other people involved. It's, part of like a dream team, making sure that all those people really know what they're talking about. And for the most part, your mortgage banker, your real estate agent, the attorney, we really have one thing that we want done. We want that client in that house. We want to make sure that everything goes smoothly. We're all referral-based businesses, so we want to make sure everything goes smoothly. So that's why we really want the customer to be in touch with us throughout the process to make sure that there are really no bumps in the road. We want to make it as easy as possible, especially for that new purchaser, never bought that home before. You know what I'm talking about.
Real well. And I know that we were yelling for what they call the declaration page and a paid receipt so the bank can make the loan. But that means prior to the TRID changes, we were doing it day of.
Yeah, now, 3 days, definitely. You want to make sure, and rates, just like rates with mortgages, rates for insurance don't stay the same all the time.
How does that work? I mean, maybe let's kind of wrap up, but how does that work? I'm unfamiliar with rates fluctuating like you're describing.
Well, depending on the company, most rates are, when you get a price from an insurance agent, they can't guarantee that for 3 months down the line. Typically, a quote is good for 14 or 10 or 20 or 30 days, depending on the company. So it's up to the insurance agent to let the client know that, and so if they don't close within, which, closings are usually always, a little bit later than expected, you want to make sure that the client knows to be in touch with their agent and get that. And you want the paperwork at the attorney and the mortgage broker or the mortgage banker ahead of time where they know that that rate's done. So you're not delaying a closing for 3 days due to trade.
So that's a real nice tidbit, nice kernel of information that you taught me, I got to say. And that means if I don't know it, that means that buyers sure don't know it. And they have essentially a lock-in period like they do with a loan.
It's similar, yes, exactly.
Wow. So everyone knows about a lock-in for a loan, and basically nobody knows about a lock-in for a premium number.
Yeah, insurance companies change their rates, they can do it quarterly, annually, semi-annually, they do it all different times. And then if you have a brand new home and then you're closing, that's what I'm dealing with right now. A house built in 2015, it's a brand new house. In January 1st, that house will be 1 year old, and the discounts are a little bit different.
So how do you make the buyer or the buying community or even the real estate broker and real estate community as a whole know about those potential fluctuations?
Educate them at the point of sale. A lot of companies have really commoditized the market where it's just, okay, here's the price, you don't know what you're getting. I educate my customers from the start of the conversation to the end of the conversation to make sure that they know what pitfalls or what changes might be possible, and also what maybe other discounts they might have down the line once they've actually purchased it, installing a alarm system, doing upgrades on their roof, things like that.
And when a buyer or new homeowner puts in an alarm system, or how does that work? They inform you as the carrier, and then you give them a discount?
Yeah, we get proof on what system they have or what what it entails, and it's an automatic discount.
Now, of course, you recommend everyone has a fire and smoke detector, right? That's required as well by law.
Anybody, definitely. Carbon monoxide, all that stuff. Yes, definitely.
Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to donate, as we'd like to say? Because we have to go to break, and I mean, you've been.
Is there an HO7?
We covered a lot of bases, so I'm thankful for the opportunity, and I appreciate the call.
Yeah. Okay, Robert. How do we reach you?
Office number 516-222-6060, and you can easily find me on Facebook and the internet as well.
What's an HO7?
Before we leave, someone's typing in on Meerkat as we're live streaming through the World Wide Web. What is an HO7? Is that right after HO6?
It's probably, we don't do HO7s. HO6 is a condo co-op policy, and HO7 might be more of a modified type of that. And HO4 is more of a rental insurance, renting the apartments. And an HO2 and an HO3 is a homeowner's policy.
Okay. Well, Robert, thank you for your generous contribution and your time. We appreciate it. Thank you for the insight you offered into this show for our consumers that are listening and those we can touch. Appreciate your help.
My pleasure, Scott.
Take care. We'll go to a quick break. Thanks.
Have you ever been disappointed because something you planned went wrong at the
Give
last
him
moment?
time to
Doesn't
call.
that
A
little
make
early,
you
but we gave him time to
frustrated?
call.
That won't
Okay, we have the other
happen
gentleman
with
calling like
mortgage.
in 2 minutes or 1 minute.
The loan process
Oh, good.
is designed to remove the stress and hassle from getting your loan approved quickly. Movement Mortgage is the Inc. 500 fastest growing company.
That was,
in 22
Sonia is a realtor in Chicago, and so she joined in the show, and she was asking that insurance question and wanted more information on HO7 because she's dealing with condo stuff. So she just.
Well, he's a co-op, so then he probably means.
So that's 6 or 7. We didn't really dive too deep into it, but this was insurance for that kind of product.
Yeah. Well, the condo is a blanket policy. They're talking about her own from the walls inside. It could be her skis. It could be for smoke. Someone says your personal property. We didn't even touch on the liability where someone slips and falls. If you come to my house, slips and fall, slip and fall, then what?
This is Paul Oster, the nation's credit repairman, and I want to help you improve your credit. As
So
the
you're here?
CEO of Better Qualified,
We're all here
I've
47
helped
times a
thousands
year?
of people over the past
It's Mondays,
10
man.
years.
Yeah,
Like,
it
it seems like
Credit expert for Fox Business
every day is
News
Monday.
And all the major networks. I'm a certified
Doesn't it?
FICO
It makes
pro that uses
having this
consumer
anchor the
laws
week. It's
to
like
help delete negative
you
information
know how
off
fast
credit
weeks go.
reports. We have a
You know, it's a.
debt program.
I mean,
it's like
the
crazy. Seriously.
kids go to school and everything like that, but this is a
You could be entitled
different
up to
business
$1,000
operation.
for
So
violation. Call now for your
I mean,
free
really,
credit
then
consultation.
my weekends are structured from people with older kids like you.
That number
It's
again,
even more.
888
My brother's weekend goes, your weekend must go in a minute.
533
Yeah.
or
This,
visit us
eat,
on the
done,
web
sleep, bum,
at
bum.
betterqualified.com.
Whether you're looking to buy a new home
1
or
minute.
refinance,
You'll never, Scott, have more time than you have right now.
I don't have that much free time anymore.
yes, you do. You have all the time in the world.
I don't know. In comparison to when I was in college.
Yeah, then
Oh
you
my God.
What he means is
You have
there is no one telling you, or you have
Or no
a duty to anyone else. Like
Yeah.
kids calling
No,
you and
yeah.
saying, "I need a ride home right now,"
Yeah.
or your wife calling you and
And
saying,
I still have.
"We're
a
meeting
mine
Bobby
are-
and Sue
mine
for
are
dinner."
preschool, so
Yeah.
I tell them what to do.
I
still.
understand. No, it's
So you have ultimate freedom.
This guy's telling me it's the wrong number.
10 seconds.
It's 693.
5700. 5 seconds.
Licensed lender by the Colorado Mortgage Company registration.
All right, the inspector's calling in now. Okay, great. Listen, we heard from a top insurance professional. So you buyers out there, and even real estate practitioners, if you're listening in, should have a greater understanding as to what it is to look for. I mean, this is obviously a huge subject. We can't cover it in 2 minutes like we did, but that's something to ask others to get a better insight as to what is happening. We learned one thing for sure, that it should not be the last thing you look at, home insurance, and it's something that you may want to look at timely. I understand we have a caller calling in now. Okay, this is Stephen Silva.
Yes.
Hi, and Stephen is a home inspector in Westchester, goes around the metro area. I know that, Stephen, I don't know if you listened to the show just before.
Yes.
And you thought it was great, right?
Absolutely.
Well, it is great because we're trying to get some people in the local area, and this is live streaming, to become better aware. And I prefaced our conversation and my remarks before in that people shop for homes and mortgages and even, I guess, furniture, and then the last minute when they like their house, they say, we need someone to look at it. We need to find out somebody who is going to find out if the walls are falling down, if they can be insured, will we live here, will the roof leak, is the foundation any good, and will the burners and furnaces and the system in the house work, right? And that's you.
Right. Exactly.
So, that's cool. So tell me, we got a lot of questions, and we got some, let me think what kind of time we got. We got some time.
20 minutes.
We got 20 minutes, 18, 19 minutes. So there's a lot of, what I did with Robert before is ask a little bit of a Q&A. And in this area, tell me if this has been your experience, this has been mine, that purchasing of homes is not contingent on the inspection. However, it kind of is. Other areas like Wisconsin, it's in the contract. The lawyers you deal with and the brokers that arrange the deals you do, it's not an actual contingency, but it's like one, where if they hate the house, they're not going to buy it, and if they don't, then they'll work it. So tell me what you do on behalf of clients.
So really, a home inspection is really the opportunity for the client to truly become educated about everything about the house, the good, the bad, the ugly, really finding out what makes the home tick. Obviously, trying to get past just the curb appeal and maybe have a great kitchen or a great master suite, but really getting into the nitty-gritty of what it's going to be
to manage and live in that house day after day. And really, again, it's just the education process of how all the systems work, the age of the house, exactly how it was built, and really just having a discussion about what that home will require in terms of maintenance. Because it's not just getting into the house; it's a matter of actually continuing to live in the house year after year and handling the burdens of home ownership.
I see. Now, it's important because homes are, I'm going to speak in this area from which I'm proficient, homes are sold as is. So the normal contract here, and I think that there's other derivations of that rule, is that the buyer is swearing that they are aware of the condition of the house and they've had their professional, such as you, inform them of what they can otherwise become aware. So what do you give them, and what do you, like, how does the process go? Are they there when you do the inspection, and what type of written report do you give?
Yeah, I always highly recommend to my clients that they be present on the day of the inspection, simply because it's a lot easier to understand a defect that is found as a part of the home inspection process when we're both standing in front of it and I can walk them through why it's a defect, what they need to do to remedy that defect, or if it's a recurring thing such as a maintenance defect, what they're going to need to, what contractors are going to need to establish a good working rapport with in order to keep on top of that maintenance item.
I see. That makes sense.
And for the report itself, the report is really, just a visualization of what the inspection process was, and it really becomes a point of reference for the home buyer in the future when they are actually living in the home. They can, reference back to it, and along with the regular defects, kind of just touch base on the maintenance defects and just kind of come up with a plan on how to properly manage that property.
Okay.
You kind of touched on it, whether or not a home inspection can be used as a negotiating tool, and if the results of the defects that are found as a part of the home inspection can be used to, go back to the seller and try to ask for some money off their asking price. It's actually a very commonly asked question by my clients, and what I tell them is that the home inspection is really not supposed to be for use for those purposes. Whether or not they end up, powwowing with their realtor and figuring out how best to move forward, that's really a separate issue. But the home inspection is really nothing more than an educational process for the buyer to really fully understand what it is that's going on with the house, the overall condition of the house, and any major defects that need to be addressed. Some buyers may be looking for that to use, and in some cases, especially in regards to any safety hazards, structural hazards, any environmental hazards such as high radon or mold, sometimes that can be used. The home inspection report can be used as a point of leverage for the negotiation process.
I agree. Stephen, that's what I believe. However, depending on the market, in a hot market like we have now, where there are multiple offers, it's basically take it or leave it. But everyone has to become aware of what the condition it's in. So I want to ask you about basically what you do. I mean, I have a little bit of a printout of looking at one of your former reports. You look at them just, of course, exterior walls, foundation, grading, of course, the roof, the heating and HVAC, electrical, the water heater, appliances, and bathrooms. So what happens? I mean, give us, a day in the life. When you meet the home buyer, the prospective home buyer at the curb, you say and they say?
Sure. When I first meet with my client, I start off right off the bat asking if they have any major issues or concerns with the house that they would like me to pay some special attention to. Things they may have seen during some of their, walkthroughs, visiting the home with their realtor, whether they saw kind of a suspicious crack in the foundation wall, whether or not they saw something, looked like some damage to the shingles on the roof. Really just try to gauge what it is that they're looking at in the house and what their main areas of concern are. So once I get past that and we, establish, how the flow of the inspection is going to go, we always start on the outside, start by looking at the roof, the ventilation, the condition of the gutters, the drain pipes for the gutter extensions that are attached to it, then we look at the exterior walls. After we look at the exterior walls, we, circle the property several times, checking out the exterior ground. If there's a well on the property, at the wellhead. Then once we go inside, I usually take my clients straight down into the mechanical room. We do a full assessment of all of their mechanicals, their boiler or their furnace, their electrical panel, their plumbing system, and if they have as well.
5950.
Then I'll take a look at the foundation.
When we get close, I'll give you cues.
And then really just the general interior of the basement, whether it be a basement or a crawl space. The next move is heading up into the attic, and really those two areas, the basement and the attic, are really where the longest chunks of time are taken on the inspection. Typically because those are your biggest, what could be considered money pits are, right? Your mechanical system can be very costly to replace, if not maintain, and then the attic is really where you get to see the overall health of your roof system, because the underside of the roof, if there's any areas or any suspicions of leaks, of mold growth, of anything like that, we're going to see it in both the basement and the attic. And then obviously down in the basement, that's where we have access to take a look at the structural integrity of the foundation, as long as the walls are unfinished. And really those are the two longest chunks of time spent in the inspection. And then the rest of the house is obviously inspected. The general interior, the bathrooms, the kitchen. We test for water pressure. We make sure that all of the appliances in the kitchen are properly running within regular, normal use. So it really is a comprehensive look at the house. Everything that is readily accessible and easily viewable, any controls that are used normally by a homeowner, those are the parameters of a home inspection.
Okay, so we got some time. I want to just run down a few things, maybe some fun things. Just a little bit of a quick cross exam. So you don't handle environmental, right? That's like any kind of Superfund site. You don't do that stuff, right?
For soil testing, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, soil testing falls under an environmental testing.
That's what I thought. Okay.
And that's related to any buried oil tanks that are there. Those are typically done by established extra professionals that specialize in just that.
Okay. And I guess I want to get a few things about you and a few things about maybe some fun stories. You mentioned money pits. So you don't do pests, termites? You need a separate person for that?
Some home inspectors are licensed for it, but it's very important, particularly if you are a buyer purchasing a home with an FHA loan. You need to make sure that your inspector or your termite inspector has what's called a 7B license. That's the New York State license for pest inspection.
Okay.
And only those licensed professionals can fill out the paperwork as a part of the FHA loan requirement.
Okay, now I know that there's been some changes. Let's try to rifle through these. Not too long ago, home inspectors were not licensed, and I had a situation where someone purporting that he was a home inspector was not licensed after the period of time that he was supposed to be, and made some gross misrepresentation that killed a deal of a client of mine. So I was really livid. And let me ask you about I know there's an inherent little controversy in the inspector world, a PE, professional engineer, or home inspector. Let me hear your thoughts and I'll tell you mine.
Yeah, for home inspectors, I mean, really anyone can become a home inspector in terms of your background. You don't necessarily have to be a PE in order to be an effective home inspector, because at the end of the day, all New York State licensed home inspectors are all supposed to follow what's called the standards of practice, which is the parameters of and limitations of home inspectors performing home inspections.
Is that in the? I know there's ASHI. What is Americans? What is it?
I'm actually a certified member of INTERNAT, the International Association of Certified Home Inspectors. But it's kind of like the same type of organization. It's just a different one. That's all.
I see. Okay, so that's the governing body. That's the air of legitimacy. And the aspect I was mentioning of concerning the PE controversy is some home inspectors say, listen, a professional engineer is great if you want to know if your foundation is going to fall in, but they may not know the systems in the home electrical, even plumbing, light plumbing, heating, ventilation, as well as someone who's done this just as a home inspector for many more years.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that ties back into what I was just saying. It really, you can be a home inspector and come from a multitude of backgrounds. The idea is that if you are a licensed home inspector, especially in the state of New York, the state issues a test that you are required to pass, as well as the education and continuing education as what it requires to uphold your license. So while I was saying that having a PE background home inspector is actually a great home inspector to bring on site, especially if you're dealing with older structures.
Yeah, and then you'll have like 2 minutes to talk on your own.
Homes that over time have really just settled, and structural integrity of the home and the structure itself is a question or a concern for the buyer. But just because you are not a PE does not mean that you are any better or worse than someone who is. Basically, it just means that you have a different area of expertise. I personally, I come from a construction project management background where I had 5.5 years of experience of working as a project manager and really had my hands touched in all of the different trades. So it kind of gave me a well-rounded view of home construction and what the ins and outs of all the different areas are. But again, if there were certain homes that I would be called on to inspect, and the overall appearance of the structure was something that truly concerned me, it would not be above me to recommend to my client to have a structural engineer come and further evaluate, which I have done several times in the past. And, in certain cases, a home inspector may have been a plumber in his past life, so that makes him an expert in that section of the home inspector. Another one may have been a carpenter. So it really is up to the buyer to do a little bit of due diligence to just ask what the qualifications and background of each home inspector are, because a different property may lend itself to hiring a different home inspector, depending on the kind of obvious staring you in the face defects that a layperson may find.
Okay, I want to hear. I mean, have you ever come across homes that you're think are just terrible and tell the client not to buy it?
Well, that's something that as a professional home inspector, I try not to do. At the end of the day, I'm really just there to report on the overall condition and defects found as a part of the home inspection. Whether or not it's something to my personal liking or not, that's really irrelevant. At the end of the day, I'm really brought in as a third party who is not emotionally invested the way the buyers may be, the way the real estate agents may be, and really is my job to assert a realistic representation of my findings. Now, have I had clients say, would you buy this house? Of course. Usually,
Okay, so you essentially calls them as you sees them, right? But
well, it's calling them like I see them, but, and this is really important, I think, especially for potential home buyers, is really looking for a home inspector who has a clear and concise method of communication, because I really think that that's where a lot of the breakdowns in home inspection happen. A lot of home inspectors get the rap, and some rightfully so, of being alarmist, being, kind of fast to throw red flags all over the place, and in essence scare the buyer, which I'm sure a lot of realtors listening in right now could probably nod their head while they're hearing me say that, say, yes, that's happened to me. So the whole thing is really not just finding what's wrong with it, but explaining it in a way that assures the buyer that if this is a house you really want to buy, this is what's wrong with it, but here's what you need to do to turn those negatives to a positive and make this home a comfortable home to live in and a safe home to live in.
I see. Well, Steve, there's an interesting interaction between the appraiser, whose job is just to ascertain the value, and is not supposed to take into consideration necessarily the condition. Doesn't care about how old the pipes are or whether the roof needs replacement. If it's working and it's serviceable and there's some more life expectancy, or the systems have an obsolescence of a certain period of time, that it's not going to affect the value that much. Maybe not even at all, depending on what's sold across the street. So your role, I know, has become a little bit more of. I know the realtors are submitting home inspections to banks now because they want something other than, you mentioned yourself as an objective third party. The appraisers are there. They're not an objective third party. They're paid by the client through the bank
Correct.
So they need some other eyeballs on it, and your business and profession is oftentimes nowadays being seen as the air of credibility. Like, is this real? I will tell you, there's a house nearby my mother-in-law that is like falling down, and on Halloween the kids thought it was done up for Halloween, but that's really what it looks like.
Oh boy.
And it was, really bad. And in fact, ironically, the person with that house didn't even put any candy out. So the kids were going there, and it was, they could have gone in the summer. But
They will probably didn't put any candy up because their front steps are probably.
right, it's really, everything was, everything bad. So I laugh sometimes because what realtors call a fixer-upper, and I'm a realtor so I can laugh, is really, the Tom Hanks money pit, and, you have to be there with a straight face. I guess, depending on the price, then you could give it some seal. What do you do? You have to cover your ass pretty good with a bunch of disclosures and disclaimers and say that, this is what it is, and we're letting you know what it is?
Well, unfortunately, as a part of this litigious society that we live in, I do have to put a lot of disclaimers and notices in my report for that very reason, to protect myself. But at the end of the day, I think it really does come down to the clear and concise communication that a good home inspector will provide to their clients. It really is not just reading your clients, asking them questions, speaking with their realtors, and seeing exactly what's going on with their status. Some people want that house near your mother-in-law that's breaking down because they just, they have some cash, invest back in, turn it, flip it around. It really comes down to that. But a lot of times, if it's a first-time home buyers that are really maxing out their budget just to get into a home, and just buying the home will pretty much clear them out. It really is important, and I really stress to those types of clients who tell me that, look, this is already, like, we're at the max. I don't tell them straight out that, you shouldn't be buying this, but I make sure that they fully understand that systems may need to be fully replaced, roofs may need to be fully replaced, window replacement, these are big ticket items that just one of them could set back a set of buyers.
Sure. Well, it seems like, Steve, those are the buyers that need to buy a brand new condo. I'll tell you my experience. I bought a house and, wondered why at the time, where it needed everything. So my inspector at the time gave me something. I didn't even read it because I knew that it was hammered and it needed to be a new this, a new that, windows and furnace, etc. So I agree with you that I think the communication is key. The buyers need to know because they're so daunted by everything else. It seems like they've gone through the search. Now they get beat up by the mortgage guy. Now they got to go through something they've never experienced before. So it's tough. But I credit you and other professionals who give that kind of insight to their clients. But listen, we got to kind of wrap up. I'm going to have a few closing moments. I appreciate you coming on and giving us your valuable information and some guidance. How do we get in touch with you? This is Steve Silva.
Yeah, Stephen Silva from Estate Inspection Group. You can visit our website at www.estateinspectiongroup.com, where you can find us on Facebook, on Google, on Yelp, Twitter. Really just search Estate. That's ESTATE Inspection Group.
I like it. Okay, I appreciate it, and I will be chatting with you soon.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Okay, thanks a lot. So, folks, we're broadcasting again on Meerkat and Periscopes. We heard from two really what some people consider to be ancillary service providers, the home inspector and the insurance professional, but they are really necessary. You can't have the house without insurance. You can't have the house until you know what you're going to live in. And this goes for sellers too. One thing we didn't touch on, I didn't want to get into this whole role of sometimes the seller needs an inspection to let the buyer know, look, here's the condition of the house. We live here. We know. Don't come back to us with a song and dance and a sob story and want a price reduction. So I'm real happy that we've got a chance to provide these two professionals for the public and to let others see that other side of it. It's not as sexy as the house or as interesting as the mortgage, but it is necessary. There's going to be a chance for everyone in every home purchase to need this kind of thing. I am Scott Forsino from Exit Realty Group. You can reach me at 914-879-8411. Thanks from Victoria and myself. We will be here next week, Monday at 6. Thank you.
From the
Nailed
NTG
it.
Studios, it's
Good.
News Talk
Thanks.
1230 WFAS White Plains.
All right.
That's good. Those guys did a great job. I mean, you could honestly, you could go on the home inspection. I believe the seller should get home inspections. If I was selling my house and I was a normal seller, I would have an inspection, an appraisal, and a title report. A, B, C, hand it to you. Here's the house, the condition. Here's the value. I mean, think about it. Tim, you're a buyer.
Right.
Here's the value. Here's the condition. Any questions? I already did my homework. I paid for it. This is real. Whatever your inspector, whatever your appraiser finds is going to be here or very close.
Right. That makes it very easy for.
I mean, it makes much more of a purchasable thing versus think about how stupid it is. When I was really rocking and rolling, representing a seller, people would fax me, like dumbass realtors would fax me an inspection report. I fax it back. Why do we need to know? We live there. You want it or not? Because you didn't do your homework. They want to show houses, get offers, and then deal with it. Now you deal with everything.
Right, but sellers who do that and provide that first.
Yeah. That doesn't mean the buyer's going to use that one.
No, it doesn't mean that, and they shouldn't. They
Right,
absolutely
they should get their
shouldn't.
own, right.
But like he said on the show, you're admitting everything that an inspector might find, and you're not gonna you're not trying to dupe anybody.
Right. Is that a good thing?
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing, and you're justifying.
Here's the price.
In a way, you're justifying your price well beforehand.
Think about this. I'm the seller, you're the buyer. Here's the price, and then what do you have? You have no empirical data to base your offer on. Let's be real. Offers are completely from the gut and nowhere at all from anywhere based in reality. Right or wrong? They make 25. Oh, you're 25 like it feels good? I mean, it's stupid. It's all done wrong. And I blame the realtors for every wrong thing in this industry. You know that I do.
Well, I understand where you're coming from. We're still alive.
We're live. Okay. Well, I do blame them. I wish they could do better.
Because there's still 60 people
Well, folks,
in the room.
then text me or tweet me and see if you agree. It could be done a lot better. It makes no sense for people to be getting insurance days before a closing. Can you imagine? I mean, I've seen that.
And the other point is that you should annually or every other year, recheck your insurance policy, and because they change their rates, and the value of the house changes, the value of all that stuff you have in it. You want to make sure you're covered. You want to make sure that
I had a pipe burst in Long Island,
right.
And I got the basement wiped out. It was a remediation of over $5,000 that I had to pay, and the basement was, knee deep in water.
Right. Does anybody on Meerkat here, anybody else have any questions, anything like that for inspections, anything else? What do we have coming up on the next show?
We'll be here Monday at 6. I don't know our guests. We always have compelling information and fantastic education.
Is there anybody with a topic you want discussed? Anything you want coverage on? Any questions you have that we might want to do a show on? Anything like that? Just
let us know.
Send it in.
Take requests.
You can send me a tweet or plug it in here anytime. But thanks everybody for showing up. Really appreciate it. It was another great show. All right.
Thanks.